The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Robert Tan. Catch up with us on Business Brief. Asian shares were mostly lower on Thursday. This came after Wall Street drifted to mixed close. Japan's Nikkei 225 dropped 0.90%, while South Korea's Kospi slipped 0.64%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng fell 0.54%. Taiwan's TAIEX edged down by nearly 0.1%. In contrast, gains were seen in Indonesia's JKSE, which rose by more than 1%. India's Nifty 50, which climbed 0.52%, and Australia's ASX 200, which added 0.20%. In the currency market, the US dollar traded mixed against major Asia-Pacific currencies. The dollar slipped 0.44% against the Japanese yen and fell 0.21% versus the Singapore dollar. It also declined 0.15% against the South Korean won and nearly 0.1% against the Australian dollar. Meanwhile, the dollar is flat with an upward bias against the Hong Kong dollar and the Thai baht. Key commodities and cryptocurrencies also posted broad declines. Gold fell more than 1%, while oil prices dropped sharply, with West Texas Intermediate crude and Brent crude slipping more than 2%, and Dubai crude easing more than 1%. In the crypto market, Bitcoin slid 0.83% and Ethereum dipped 0.74%. Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani pushed back on criticisms over his country's offer of a $400 million Boeing 747 jet to U.S. President Donald Trump. In an interview with Fox News, the Prime Minister said the deal was a routine government-to-government transaction and the jet was not a personal gift. Critics warn it's a potential illegal foreign donation and a national security risk. Trump, for his part, dismissed the backlash.
The first American president coming for a state visit to Qatar in the history. So, of course, the relationship has been ongoing for decades now. And it's on multi-levels, whether it's on the security, defense, economy, investments. First of all, we bought this airplane from an American company. It's basically part of a cooperation that we've been doing a lot together between Qatar and the United States.
Hollywood icon Robert De Niro lashed out at U.S. President Donald Trump for pushing for tariffs on foreign-made films. During his acceptance speech for his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Cannes Film Festival, De Niro called on everyone who cares about liberty to organize against Trump.
America's Philistine president has had himself appointed head of one of our premier cultural institutions. He has cut funding and support to the arts, humanities, and education. And now he has announced a 100% tariff on films produced outside the U.S. Let that sink in for a minute. You can't put a price on creativity, but apparently you can put a tariff on it. Of course, this is unacceptable. All these attacks are unacceptable. And this isn't just an American problem. It's a global one. Unlike a film, we can't just all sit back and watch. We have to act, and we have to act now. Without violence, but with great passion and determination.
The Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, gives a stern warning that the exports in the region will barely grow this year amid U.S. tariffs. This as the 21-member bloc kicked off its annual gathering of its trade ministers. APEC forecasts in its regional trends analysis report that exports in the region will just increase 0.4% in 2025. This is slower than 5.7% growth in 2024. The bloc also projects that its regional economy will grow to 2.6%, lower from previous forecasts of 3.3%.
We have heard announcements of higher tariffs, retaliatory measures, suspension or elimination of benefits or procedures facilitating trade. We have heard about an increase of non-tariff measures affecting trade. And all of this, unfortunately, is not helping business, because what they are doing is to add unprecedented levels of policy uncertainty. This is also eroding investors' confidence, weakening demand, and they could eventually affect jobs.
Controversy swirls in Washington as U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. faces tough questions in his first congressional testimony. Kennedy defended massive budget cuts and thousands of job losses at the U.S. Department of Health, moves he says are part of a leaner, more efficient approach. But lawmakers slammed his response to a measles outbreak now spanning 11 states with over 1,000 reported cases, criticizing his hesitant endorsement of vaccines despite growing public health risks.
That I want my questions answered on, are you freezing and withholding funding that Congress appropriated in 2025 for life-saving NIH research?
You have the power of the purse here.
Thank
sure
you.
You know that.
Thank you for reiterating that, but I think that I'm not sure the administration really has internalized that, particularly Mr. Vogt hasn't internalized that when he says that we can in fact, impound money. The money is there. The 2024 budget includes the funding for the NIH. Will you commit to spending the money that is in 2024 in that budget?
As I said, ranking member, if you appropriate the money, I'm going to spend that money.
The money has been appropriated. So the answer to that is if you're not willing to accept the funds that have been lawfully voted by members of the House and Senate on the money for the National Institutes of Health. We're going to hold you to your word that that funding is there. It should be transferred from 24 to 25, and you've cut already $20 billion. Let's get that money back.
The controversy underscores a larger debate on how much should governments cut health spending in the name of efficiency, especially as infectious diseases re-emerge and global mobility rises. And Pope Leo XIV, the first U.S.-born pontiff, issues his strongest call yet for global peace, offering the Vatican as a mediator in ongoing conflicts. Speaking to members of the Eastern Catholic Churches, many from war-torn regions like Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Ukraine, the Pope condemned violence and persecution, particularly against religious minorities. He said the Holy See is ready to bring warring sides to the table to rebuild trust, restore dignity, and help communities find hope through dialogue. With millions of Filipinos working or living in conflict-hit areas overseas, the Pope's message of peace resonates strongly and underscores the Vatican's role in championing diplomatic solutions on the global stage. And we're taking a short break. The biggest business stories from around the country excuse me, are up next. You're watching Business Brief. The country's top business group is already setting the legislative agenda even before the lawmakers take their seats. Now, what legislation does PCCI want tackled ASAP? Sujin Kim has more.
Robert, even as the country awaits the official results of the midterm elections, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry has already been calling on the incoming Congress to prioritize critical economic reforms. In an interview with Bilyonaryo News Channel, PCCI President Enonina Manyo outlined 3 top legislative priorities that the business sector urges the new Congress to act on immediately. First, the Magna Carta for MSMEs, to expand the mandatory allocation of loans for small businesses and remove the Bangko Central's regulatory cover over SB Corporation. Manyo emphasized that giving SB Corp more flexibility could result in lower interest rates and relaxed lending requirements.
Because you have to remember, the best support that we can give to our SMEs is to provide them with a more competitive interest rate. It's because remember, our economy, the SMEs is the backbone of our economy.
Second, the International Maritime Trade Competitiveness Act. According to PCCI, current shipping charges in the Philippines are outdated and uncompetitive compared to other ASEAN countries. They asked to impose regulatory oversight on international shipping lines to reduce logistics costs for exporters and importers alike.
Our international maritime trade competitiveness. Our charges right now are not competitive as the one that we have, that our neighboring ASEAN countries are having.
Third, the National Quality Infrastructure Act to raise the global competitiveness of Filipino products. Manyo stressed that a strong quality infrastructure system would help local manufacturers gain access to global markets. PCCI also reiterated support for amending the charters of the Philippine Ports Authority and the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines to separate developmental and regulatory functions. Under the proposal, infrastructure development would be transferred to the private sector, allowing the agencies to focus purely on regulation. And those are latest updates from Quezon City. Back to you, Robert.
Thank you for that report, Sujin Kim. Meanwhile, the public saw a balanced result in this year's senatorial race, triggering a positive reaction from several sectors in the market, according to Manny Ocampo, the Senior Managing Director of the Investment and Capital Corporation. Ocampo sees incoming Senators Bam Aquino and Kiko Pangilinan as those in the Magic 12 who could potentially champion economic reforms in the Philippines, since they've been known to be friendlier towards the business sector. Meantime, when asked about what he wanted to see done by the new senators in their first 100 days in office, this was his response.
Okay.
We're hoping that, I was going to say that we're hoping that maybe bills that got stuck with the previous Congress start to move forward. BIFITA, for example, is one of them. The amendments to the Magna Carta for MSMEs. The amendments would really, maybe push more credit to MSMEs, or it's a sector that the banks may be less akin to lending to, because they're always playing it on the safe side. So we'll see. There are quite a number of MSMEs that would do well, but are just not being given the opportunity.
And while it is expected for the Senate to focus on the impending impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte, Ocampo says, quote, "Just get on with it, but don't forget economics." The money sent home by overseas Filipino inches up to nearly $3 billion in March. Latest data from Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, shows this is higher than the $2.74 billion recorded in the same month last year and $2.72 billion print in February. BSP explains both land-based and sea-based workers contributed to the increase in remittances. Thousands of depositors in Oriental Mindoro are affected as the Bangko Sentral shuts down Oriental Tamarao Rural Bank. The PDIC stepped in on May 13 after the Monetary Board ordered the closure days earlier. The bank, which ran a single branch in Barcenaga, Naujan, held nearly 99 million pesos in deposits. Accounts worth over 90 million pesos are insured and set for payout. Qualified clients will start getting their money back by June 2 through Land Bank debit cards or postal money orders. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. announces the removal of maximum suggested retail price for pork. This takes effect Thursday after consultations with industry stakeholders dealing with the ongoing challenges posed by the African swine fever.
The main reason is may clamor din ng industry na sobrang short ng supply, na hayaan na silang magbenta ng farm gate price above 230. Of course, meron din issue sa low compliance, so we are reevaluating our strategy in order to solve this issue.
The government is expanding its 20 peso per kilo rice program, a flagship anti-inflation measure, to at least 32 Kadiwa stores and public markets across Metro Manila and nearby provinces. The rollout had been temporarily paused due to the midterm election aid ban. Agriculture Assistant Secretary Genevieve Guevara said the pilot run received strong public support with consumers praising both the affordability and quality of the subsidized rice. The program is backed by 370,000 metric tons of allocated stocks and 5 billion pesos in funding, enough to sustain operations through December. Beyond short-term relief, the initiative is seen as part of the administration's broader push to tame food inflation, support local farmers, and strengthen social protection. Malacanang says the program will continue regardless of political outcomes, calling it a core public service commitment. A new generation of Filipino investors is changing the game, younger, more digitally savvy, and looking for easier ways to grow their money. In response, BPI Securities has launched a new online trading platform aimed at making stock investing more accessible than ever. Sujin Kim has more details.
The trading landscape in the Philippines is changing. More Gen Z and millennial Filipinos are skipping traditional brokers and moving towards digital platforms to invest in the stock market. The Bank of the Philippine Islands, through its brokerage arm BPI Securities, has launched the newly revamped BPI Trade, a web and mobile-based platform built for the next generation of investors.
But in terms of target, our goal is, of course, to drive the growth of retail investors. Because online accounts is driving the total investor profile of the PSE, under the PSE. I think the growth from 2020 to 2023, in terms of total investors in the PSE, it's around 36%. But online account growth from 2020 versus 2023 is actually 63%.
From 100,000 users, mostly millennials and Gen X, BPI Trade aims to expand its user base to 300,000 in the next 2 to 3 years.
And we're still targeting to grow it more, especially with the help of our new fully online account opening feature, which will not only add, of course, new account openings, but will help integrate or entice more investors to join not just investing in stocks, but of course being financially literate and investing for the long term.
For investors dealing with larger capital, BPI Trade stresses its commitment to security, stability, and full regulatory compliance.
And so I guess in terms of competition, we know it's tough, but I think what we have and what the others don't have is in terms of the backing of the bank. So in terms of stability and security, you are assured that with BPI Trade, your investment, your money is going to be as safe as it comes. I mean, when it comes to stability, it's as stable as it comes.
As part of its roadmap, BPI Trade is set to roll out additional features this year, including mutual fund access, conditional order functions, and multi-asset trading tools. Trading on BPI Trade is currently limited to the Philippine Stock Exchange, but the company confirms it is exploring foreign market access as a future expansion step. The new BPI Trade website will be officially accessible to the public on May 28 with no minimum initial investment required. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
San Miguel Corporation, led by Ramon Ang, reported a first quarter net income of 43.4 billion pesos. That's more than 4 times higher than the 8.9 billion pesos posted a year ago, boosted mainly by a one-time gain from the partial sale of its power assets and foreign exchange gains. In a social media post, Ang said the company remains focused on expanding its business while supporting national development. The Supreme Court strikes down local ordinances in Occidental Mindoro and Abra, the Ilog, that impose a 25-year ban on large-scale mining, calling them unconstitutional and in conflict with national economic policy. In a unanimous decision written by Associate Justice Marvic Leonen, the High Court ruled that the local moratoria violate Republic Act 7942 or the Philippine Mining Act of 1995. The case was filed by Agusan Petroleum and Mineral Corporation, which said the bans blocked its mining rights under a government-approved financial or technical assistance agreement. The court stressed that local governments may exercise autonomy but cannot undermine national laws or strategic industries. It added that blanket bans on mining are legally void, though LGUs may still evaluate projects on a case-by-case basis. The ruling has wide implications for mining investments and resource-based industries, affirming that regulatory clarity and policy coherence are essential to attracting long-term capital. A call for leadership at the country's top anti-cybercrime agency, Internet watchdog Scam Watch Pilipinas, is urging the DICT to immediately appoint a new head for the Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center, or CICC. Co-founder Josel de Guzman warns that without an executive director, crucial services for scam victims could face disruption. He says the agency has been leaderless for over a month. The vacuum comes after DICT Secretary Henry Aguda accepted the courtesy resignation of then CICC head Alexander Ramos, part of a department-wide reorganization initiated by Aguda following his appointment. The shakeup marks a transition period for DICT after former Secretary Ivan John Uy stepped down in March. Stakeholders say a new CICC head is urgent, with cyber threats and online scams still on the rise. The Philippine shares bounces back to the 6,400 level after falling for the second straight day. The PSE index ended lower by more than 1% to close at 64.66, finishing the day as the third worst performer in Asia. Among the day's sectoral indices, only holding firms ended in the green, with mining and oil falling the most at more than 3%. Decliners outpaced advancers 108 to 77. Total value turnover reached 6.5 billion pesos. More than a half of the day's most active stocks ended in the red, with SM Prime Holdings falling the most at more than 4%. Meanwhile, at the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 55.78 against the greenback, strengthening from previous close of 55.86. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Robert Tan. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business. Only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. See you then.